Seconds. And we're live. Go ahead.
Okay.
Mike, you want to start right in, or do you want to?
No, go right ahead. Jump right in.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Tonight's the work session to just update you on where we are from the last time that we talked about the budget. Just an update from our last discussion when we reviewed the budget a couple meetings ago. We talked about where we were at. We had approximately $1 million deficit in the budget. So currently, we've made some adjustments, and the current revenue projection with $525,000 of appropriated fund balance as well, which is the same amount we appropriated to this year's budget, is at $21.7 million, and the expenditure projection is at $22.4 million. So we're down to a deficit of about $686,000. About half an hour ago, I emailed you detailed reports that break both of those down. Those reports are by various account codes, and they show not only the proposed budget for next year, but this year's budget, as well as where we are year to date and the actual amounts for the last few completed fiscal years. So I wasn't going to go through those line by line in any detail, but it gives you all the backup should you wish to review it and take a look at, where there have been changes. If you have any questions or if you know anything when you're reviewing it, definitely feel free to reach out to Dr. McDonald or myself. I wanted to review some of the things that we've changed since our last discussion. We've received some of the BOCES budget for next year, and we've gone through and we've amended those estimates based on the actual budgets we received for BOCES. We had gone in and projected some increases in a number of their budgets. Some remained flat, some did have increases. We're still waiting on a few of their budgets, and we'll continue to refine the amounts we've budgeted for BOCES services next year as those come in. We had included two additions to the business office budget. One was for Forecast 5, which is a service that just helps with a lot of financial analysis, comparing us to other districts and things like that. That was in the original budget proposal. You saw some of the results of what Forecast 5 could provide when we had our training session that we did in the fall, where we went through and we looked at some historical information and comparisons to other districts. A lot of that information came from Forecast 5. It also had a program called Optigate, which is an employee portal that allows us to, it connects with our accounting program and allows us to, it's like a self-service portal for different functions that employees need. They can get in and see their pay stubs. They could get in and it would also, we would also use it for time off requests. Right now we have a more manual process. So right now we have a manual process where people request time off. That information is forwarded to the business office. When we post payroll, we also update their leave accruals. This would automate that whole process. So we did keep the Optigate in the budget, but we removed Forecast 5. Forecast 5 and some contacts that Dr. McDonald have been really good about giving us information when we felt we need it. So we're pretty confident that we can move forward without that and get information as needed, but it's something we can consider doing. We revised the budget for labor relations to reflect that we're going to switch that from the current service that we have to a service through BOCES. In addition, we revised it to show the change in workman's comp insurance that the board has recently approved. We decreased the facilities overtime budget $10,000 just in working with the department and restructuring how some of the overtime is, how and when some of the overtime is incurred. We think we can affect that change. Last year, we had added $15,000 in classroom furniture to the budget. We took that out for next year. We also decreased the professional development budget about $30,000 and the summer school budget about $20,000. And lastly, there's the elimination of one aide position, which we anticipate can happen for attrition. I don't know if anybody has any questions about any of those items before I'm done.
With the overtime reduction, we're there now that wouldn't affect us.
Wouldn't affect us?
With a decrease in the overtime, we're under that figure now, so that wouldn't affect us.
We are currently, there definitely will be some changes in the department in the way they utilize overtime and maybe which employees are receiving the overtime, so that will help to decrease the budget. So it'll just be structured and used a little bit different.
Okay.
And obviously, if there was something that arose during the year where there was an emergency and it would result in additional overtime, we're not going to say, oh, you can't do that because we don't have overtime in the budget. We'd make it necessary.
Right. I was assuming, but I wanted to ask that, that had been in through, so we don't end up next year having to rob from Peter to pay Paul in a sense. That was why I was just.
Yeah, looking at the utilization over several years, and also as Meg indicated, process of overtime such as building checks and different things of that nature, and the way we're using that and the way we're assigning that, we think that's an accurate reduction. We don't think we'll be in a situation, unless it's a situation that is not a normal overtime situation. So a lot of situations in that state.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on those items? All right. Some items that we're still looking at. I've got some more information on health insurance as we move along. We're still continuing to work on that. I had mentioned on the previous slide that we reduced the professional development budget $30,000. We're continuing to work on that and look at professional development needs for next year and how many people will be participating in those sessions, just to make sure that what we're left with in the budget is adequate. As there was some discussion last night about O&M equipment purchases, we're continuing to refine that and determine exactly how much we want to include in next year's budget. And also, there have been no updates on the state budget and state aid since the executive budget came out in January. So we anticipate that there will be prior to us actually adopting the budget. So we're continuing to monitor any changes that happen there, so that we can adjust the revenue projections. In regards to health insurance, the budget as it's currently put together reflects a 20% increase for active employees and our pre-65 retirees that are on our PPO plan. And that increase equates to about $600,000. Initially, in informal discussions with Excelis, they had indicated that we were looking at a 33% increase in our premium. We received our first initial renewal quote, and it came in at 28%. We also assumed a 10% increase on our 65 plus plan. That doesn't renew until January, so we don't have official quotes on that yet, but that's what we've assumed for the budget. Currently, ENV, our health insurance broker, is working on getting quotes for self-funded plans as well as other carriers, as well as looking at some changes to our plan or design that would improve consumerism by our employees and retirees, just making them changes that would help encourage the users of the plan to make cost-conscious decisions, to still get the good care that they need, but to do so in the most economical way for the plan, because premiums are driven off of our experience. So we want to help educate everyone and inform them about things that they can do, behaviors that they can change that will help control costs. In addition, we held a Insurance 101 educational session with some of our employee leadership just to review this information, to sort of start with a baseline understanding of types of plans and different plan designs, so that as we move forward with options and things that the district could do, there's just a better understanding of what we're talking about. It can definitely be an overwhelming discussion, so we kind of wanted to start the discussion with just having some information about just a knowledge base before we get into details of what's available and what changes to be. Any questions on health insurance? This is obviously has a huge impact on next year's budget.
And just even from my history here, and Rhonda, even when you were working in the business office, we know our experience as an organization has never been it's always been a high experience. We've never been an organization that did well when it came to experience rating. It's just the nature of our, always has been, of our organization. So when we're looking at this, we're trying to look at this long term. What can we do? What reshaping can we do that's going to help us as an organization for the long term. Because this is going to continue to be, it has been, it's been this way for 20 years. It's going to continue to be. I believe that's one of the reasons why we're not in the same consortium we were many, many years ago, because of the experience ratings that we have. So we're taking a really, really hard look at it. We've got a nice crew. We've got leadership from every bargaining unit, as well as some of our non-rep individuals as well on a team, and we're going to keep them together. So as we have some options to bring to the table, everybody's well informed and everybody knows what we know as we move through. So we're hoping to have some real good options for the organization that'll help us for the future.
And Mike, just to let you know, I heard my name, but you had cut out. I think my internet is really bad tonight, my signal. So if I don't respond, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I'm no longer there.
But well, what I was saying, Rhonda, was we've had a history of having a poor experience rating as an organization.
Right.
So, that's been a long-term thing. That's going to continue to. And when we're looking at $600,000 increases, we've got to do something.
Right.
So that's all.
Slide you've seen before. We discussed this at our last overview of the budget, but I just wanted to, re-clarify. This is what we're currently looking at with the state aid projections from the executive budget. So for this year, our state aid budget was $13,851,000, and for next year, we're looking at $13,982,772. Again, I have transportation aid highlighted in orange because that's generally overstated. They estimate our transportation aid based on our budgeted expenditures. Very often we come in under budget in the transportation department, so our actual aid ends up being somewhat less. So that's just something we need to be cautious of, and I have budgeted less than that in the actual budget because we know that. And then the number highlighted in yellow has to do with the governor's proposal to lump a number of these service-based aids into what he's calling services aid. And instead of them being calculated under their current individual formulas, there's a different way of calculating them. And for Walton, it results in a decrease in that aid of $127,000. So if as we move forward and watch what is done with the state budget, if that proposal is eliminated and they stay the way they are, we would anticipate an additional $127,000 in aid beyond what is currently reflected in the draft budget. Any questions on the state aid piece? Mike is optimistic that we may also see an increase in foundation aid. So I hope he's right.
Yeah, I am. I'm optimistic. I think that I think we're going to see some adjustments. I don't think it'll be huge, but I think it will make some movements. So any movement helps us, obviously.
All right. Again, as I mentioned when we talked before, there is a COVID relief aid included in the executive budget proposal. So for Walton, the proposal is $1.6 million, but there's what they call a local funding adjustment. And that local funding adjustment is the lesser of either your stimulus amount or your star aid. And for Walton, our star aid is less, and the net impact to the district is $937,000. I believe, Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the majority of districts, their COVID stimulus and their local funding adjustment are the same because their stimulus amount is less than their star aid. So the net impact for them is zero. So I think that Walton is very fortunate that we're in this position where we're still looking at $937,000 additional aid. Currently, we don't know the details of how they're going to require this aid to be used, and it's intended to span at least 21-22 and 22-23 budgets. We have identified 5 teaching positions that are in the draft budget for 21-22 that we believe could be reduced or eliminated if COVID restrictions were lifted. That equates to approximately $377,000. So we're considering earmarking a portion of this funding to fund those positions with the understanding that they may not be required in future budgets once COVID requirements are. don't require as much social distancing and things like that. Questions on that topic? So if you recall back to the first slide where I showed that the deficit in the budget is currently about 686,000, if we assume that we're going to use some of this COVID relief aid to fund those positions, it would bring that deficit down to about 300,000.
Okay.
As far as the next step in the budgets, we're going to continue to work on the health insurance options, as Mike said, with the broker and the staff leadership. We're going to finalize our budget with BOCES for next year as we get those final budgets that we don't have yet. And we're going to continue to refine our equipment purchases. And we'll be looking at the COVID relief aid and determining how much of that, currently none of that is included in the budget. So we're going to determine how much of that is appropriate to use. That is actually all that I had. I don't know if there's questions or certain things that folks would like to discuss.
The only thing I have, Meg, is just, it seems like every year that I've been on the board, it always comes down to the healthcare cost increases that really drive our gaps in our budget versus revenue. So I just think it's so important for us to get stability in that area. And I know you guys are working really hard on that, but it's the better we get stability in that area, I think the easier budgets would be rolling forward rather than having to absorb these humongous, over $500,000 increases on a yearly basis is just too much.
One of the things that contributes to health insurance being a hard thing is just the timing. So, we're in the timing of trying to prepare the budget, but it's really hard to get definitive quotes because we're so far out from the renewal in July. So that makes it challenging as well, that you're always dealing with this unknown while we're trying to solidify the budget. I have to say that I think, as far as, I came in at the very end of the 1920 budget preparation, and then we did 2021. We have, with Mike's help, we've scraped this a lot and made some changes that are really helping to decrease expenditures. So I think we've turned over a lot of rocks.
Yeah, and we'll continue. I think, Meg, what did we say? The dates, I think sometime in the next couple of weeks, we should hear something from the state as the next round of their benchmarks on the budget development. So I'm hopeful that we'll hear some more from them. Hopefully that star aid that reduction that he has never done before, that constitutes $600,000 will move. And hopefully the service aid will move. That's very important for small districts. We need to be able to control our expense aids, as I've said before, so that we can maximize. So you take service aid with BOCES. We buy in additional services this year, such as the labor relations service. We want that to drive aid coming back next year as a revenue, and then that offsets the cost. The way that he's got that new proposal, and it eliminates that ability for us to control that and strategically plan for it and use it to our benefit. So it's being advocated very strongly, but that is a big one for us. STAR as well, but that service aid is really, really big for us. We need it to be expense driven. We want aid back on what our true expenses are. So hopefully that will be adjusted so we can control our own budget and do our own strategic planning. So, but that's all. Thanks, Meg. And this was very thorough. If there's any questions, if you decide to look at the budget, we've added some details, broke up a few categories. There was the one category that was that stated PR, that actually was health safety at BOCES and our PR service at BOCES. And so we've done some descriptions and breaking out, so things are a little bit more precise and clear. So let us know if there's any questions you have, or in any other categories, or regarding anything, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
This went fairly quickly. Would you like me to take a minute and share those on my screen and sort of walk you through what I sent you earlier?
I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah, why not?
yep. I just wish I had a bigger screen at this point.
Sorry, Graydon. Yeah, like I said,
Maybe Mike
at
can
this
dig-
point, I can only get my email on my phone. So opening up attachments is a bit of a challenge. So, well, not opening them, reading them. So we
Mhm.
could go through them. I'll get that fixed with Rick, I promise. But the big stuff I can get.
Okay. So this first one, what do you see? Can you read those numbers?
Yep.
This first one just goes through our revenue categories. So the first column here is what I'm proposing for next year. This column is this year's current year budget, was your year-to-date year and then prior years. You'll see that with property taxes, we always budget an amount higher than we get, and that's because our budget includes star aid. But once the star amount is determined, that drops down to lines, and you'll see that there. You'll see that our pilot budget is decreasing because there's one of our pilot properties. Rhonda, you might be able to help me with the name, something estates, that's actually coming.
Hatfield Estates.
No. The yeah, Mountain View.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually coming, the pilot agreement is expiring and it'll be going back on the tax roll. Other items in here, you have penalties on taxes for people that don't pay within the penalty-free period. Refund of prior year's BOCES aid, that's where we've paid in based on the BOCES budget, but some of their services come in under budget, so they give us a refund for prior year's payments. You get down here to our state aid categories, it gets a little funky when you try to look across at budgets, and that's because so we have our basic state aid, this line here. They end up pulling some of that out and it gets reported as excess cost when they're excess. So it's difficult to necessarily look straight across the years. You'll see here, like I added a line for transportation aid because I was trying to separate them out so they're easier to track. So that was moved from this line down to this line. So
Meg,
yeah.
One line that I see has increased quite a bit, especially compared to the past, is the sale of scrap. The A2650.
Yeah, that's I think that we can do a better job of disposing of stuff that we don't use anymore.
Okay.
When we talked last night about equipment, obviously if we move forward with this tractor purchase, there'll be some things that we'll dispose of, and that's not necessarily completely accounted for there, but I just, I'd like to see us getting rid of more stuff, even if it's just metal that goes to Oneonta and we get a small amount for it. So
Right.
I'm being optimistic there, I guess. I generally tend on the conservative side, but I guess I'd like to just see us do better about getting rid of things we don't use, even if it's for a minimum value, because we got a lot of stuff.
Right. Yeah. And we do it at the town as well. And I know the county, the same thing. Oneonta crushers or Weitzman's, you have a bin out there for any type of metal and you get what you can for it.
Yep. So that's just me being optimistic, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I did increase our Medicaid aid. I guess I kept it flat. You'll see it's been higher in prior years, but I'm not comfortable going back up because part of that has to do with services that are provided to students, and there's some changes this year with how they're funding aides on remote days. And so I'm not confident that we're going to get a lot more than the 100,000 next year. And then the other documents I sent look very similar. This is just the expenditure side of things. Again, first column is what I'm proposing for next year. Next column is this year's budget, and then you have actual the last several years. So you can scroll down through it at your leisure. I decreased the advertising budget because we haven't spent, I think it was actually $20,000 the year before, so I had decreased it to 15 and even went down to 10. If you were anticipating many, many, many retirements, I might feel differently, but I'm pretty confident we'll be fine with that. Just scrolling down through, you'll see each of the departments. And you can take a look at any differences. You'll see here this personnel. So previously we contractually paid for labor relations services, and this just reflects it going through BOCES. There's a few other things included in this line besides labor relations services, so that the cost of the LRS service alone is going down, but there are other items in there as well. This is what Mike was referring to earlier. This is where we break out. This is our public information expense, and this is our risk, safety, and risk. So previously they were in one number, which I think, the concern was that folks didn't understand exactly what was in there. So I won't walk you through every line, but if you have questions as you go through it, feel free to throw them out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, do we have another meeting set, or are we going through the finance committee meeting first, or I don't have my schedule in front of me.
I don't believe there is another meeting set.
Okay.
I guess it's up to the board how you want to proceed, whether you want to sort of push this back to the finance committee for more discussions or keep having them with the whole group now that the whole group is involved.
I think it's, the whole group being involved is good. That way we're all on the same page. So I guess, it'll come down to when you have more information or anything significantly changes.
And with everything going on, it's going to be hard to kind of find room for finance meetings in between some of the other stuff. So in order to keep the process moving along pretty efficiently, I think it's important that everyone be involved.
Right.
The board typically adopts the budget, I believe, at the second meeting in April. So maybe at the I don't know how much information we'll have on the 16th, but maybe at the very least, we should plan on the first meeting in April, sort of having an update of where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So then any final changes that need to be made before we present a budget for adoption.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Meg.
Welcome.
And Dr. McDonald.
That it then?
I think so.
Okay. Good
Thanks,
night,
everybody.
everyone.
Have a nice evening, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.